So, welcome to this latest episode of The Curse of Melanie's Grave. I haven't really spoken about the various problems that I've had during this production, which I'm going to start talking about now in this video. So, what I wanted to talk about in this video initially is the different actors who played the same role throughout the production and why they were changed and replaced. So just for a bit of reference, there was two versions of this film. One that was shot in 2015 and the second version which was shot in 2016. The entire film was completely reshot, and I'm going to talk about that in another video of why that happened. But because of that, some of the actors kind of didn't return or were replaced or for whatever reason, so I'm going to go into that, the reasons for that, why that happened. So the main character in the film is called Mel. And she was initially played by a Swedish actress called Natasha Goulding, or Golden, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And she played Mel in the first version of the film and started to play her in the second version of the film of a year later. But then I had to get rid of her after 5 days into that second shoot, which I'll go into in another video, because there's a big long story about that. So I kind of sacked her after 5 days, got rid of her, and I replaced her with Rachel Meredith, who is the actress who's currently in the film, who stars in the film now. And as you can see from these two separate performances of the same scene, you can see the marked difference between the performances. So
you need to prepare yourself, okay?
Okay, ready?
Your mother's made contact.
No.
She's asked if you...
No!
She just wants to see you.
She's asked if you can prepare.
So, I ended up, when I recast Rachel, I ended up with a better actress entirely, because Natasha's performance was so kind of downplayed and low key. It was very, very different to the way that Rachel played it, and Rachel played it much, much better than Natasha did. So me getting rid of Natasha actually did me a favour for the film, because the film was a whole lot better because I got rid of Natasha in the first place. So the next character I wanted to talk about is Rob. Now, he is a post office robber who holds up in Mel's house. I won't go into the character details, but anyway, so he's kind of a main character in the film as well. So in the first version of the film, he was played by a guy called Mickey, but he didn't return for the reshoot, and the reason being is because he didn't want to come back on the same terms and conditions that we had on the first version of the film, which was where the actors only got paid for their travel expenses, and he didn't want to do that all over again. Even though he had said that he would, he then kind of reneged on that and didn't come back. So that was the reason I had to replace him in the second version. And that was a guy called Nikos, and he, from memory, I think he was kind of a Greek actor. And the way I got him was because he was a friend of Natasha, who played the original version of Mel. So he came on board, and when I sacked Natasha 5 days into the second shoot, the reshoot, he left thinking that was the end of the shoot for the film, because we were kind of in limbo a little bit after I'd sacked Natasha. So because he was a friend of Natasha, he left, and he was living in London, so he went back to London, and he had an audition that he wanted to do, so he just decided to leave the production altogether. So he went on his journey, and then later on in the production we recast that role, and we ended up with James Trenham, who is the guy that is actually in the film now. And again, it was a much better performance. So if you look at these three different performances by the three different actors who were playing the same role, you can kind of make your own judgment on who was the better. I have to go.
Just for a little while. I understand, go. It's just that I get so lonely sometimes and I don't have any friends. And it was a long time since I was with a man.
Look, you are a nice girl. Alright. You just have to go.
Please, just for a little while. Okay, fine. I understand. Go. It's just...
No, you're a really nice girl. I've got to go.
I understand, go. I just get so lonely and I don't have any friends. It's been a long time since I was with a man.
Now for me, Mickey was a bit kind of too brash and kind of, I think, kind of too confrontational, like all the time when he was doing his acting, whereas James played it a little bit more down key. But he was kind of the hard man when he needed to be. And Nikos, the problem with Nikos was he kind of spoke with a bit of kind of broken English, and he never learned the lines that he was supposed to be bloody saying. So every time he said the lines, he was kind of improvising and saying different, kind of the same thing but in a different way. So really, when I was thinking about it, you couldn't really cut that together in the edit from, like, you know, all the different shots and angles that you would do. The actor needs to repeat the same lines over and over, so you can kind of cut a certain, you know, whatever place that you want to do. But with Nikos, he was just kind of improvising his lines all the time, so they were never the same. So I would have had a nightmare kind of putting his edit together. So when we got James on board, James was a hell of a lot better. He knew his lines, and it was just such an improved performance on the other two previous actors. So the father in the film, Mel's father, that was a character that wasn't initially in the original 2015 version. It was only introduced when I rewrote the script for the 2016 version. So, and then I found this actor who, for some reason, I just can't even remember him. Now, I've got a contract written out for him, and it was an actor called Cameron Prudhomme or Prudhomme, not sure how you pronounce that, and I just can't remember him being in the production. Now, he must have pulled out prior to us shooting, because the guy that I thought was the original guy was a guy called Velton Lishke, and he pulled out 2 days before we were gonna shoot his scene. So we were already shooting the film, and he pulled out 2 days before because of some personal circumstances, which I won't go into, but it was a legitimate reason for pulling out. So with 2 days to go, I had to jump into that role. So that's how I ended up playing the father in the film, even though I wasn't supposed to be acting in the film. And I had to jump in because I couldn't recast at very short notice, because I didn't have time to do that, because I was actually physically in the middle of producing the film, like directing and producing the film, and I didn't have the time to do that. So that's how I ended up in the film.
But the doctor said routine was good for her.
Did I ask your opinion? Hey, don't you dare leave this room with that plate. Now, the character of D.S. Walls is a little bit complicated. So, because there was a lot of actors who were playing that role at one stage of the production, at various stages of the production. So, initially, it was an actress called Melanie who went on to play the mother in the film, in the second version. But in the first version, I originally cast Mel as D.S. Walls. Now, we had to play it by ear because her father was very ill at the time, and she was looking after him, so she wasn't sure whether she was going to be able to commit to the film. So she never appeared in the first version. Now, I had another actress on standby who agreed to be on standby, called Garry, who I had previously used in another film. So she was on standby, and then when Mel decided that she couldn't commit to the film, Garry then told me, I think she had some kind of illness as well, and she thought she was going to recover in time, but she didn't. So then she couldn't play the role. So then we ended up with an actress called Harriet Ghost, who, the way I cast her, she was the girlfriend of Mickey, who played the original version of Rob. So that's how I got. She was an actor as well, so she came on board through Mickey. And she played the original version of D.S. Walls and did quite a good job, actually. But then when we did the reshoot, she didn't return because of the same reasons that Mickey didn't return. They didn't want to come back and work on the same like for travel expenses only, so which is fair enough. They didn't want to do it again. So I then had to recast that role when we come to do the reshoot. Now, the actress that I originally had in that role for the 2016 reshoot was Rachel Meredith, who would then go on to play the lead in the film. But what had happened was, so she was originally in that role, but we hadn't shot any of her scenes at that point. And then, so 5 days into the film, when I sacked Natasha, and we were kind of up in the air with what we were going to do with the production, we decided to continue with the production, and I recast that role within a couple of days. And Rachel had said, well, can I audition for it? So she auditioned for the role of Mel. She did an excellent performance. I said, right, I'm recasting the role with you. So then that kind of vacated her role as D.S. Walls. So that meant I had to recast that role. So then I ended up with Helen Coverdale, who actually plays D.S. Walls in the film. So that is kind of how that role kind of evolved actor-wise.
It won't take long. Sit down, Miss Meadows.
Oh, no thanks. It won't be long. Sit down, Miss Meadows.
Now, there was one actor who was in both of the versions of the film playing the same role, and that was the actor Jed Purvis, who played D.I. Lawson in the film. Now, you can see that you can see the difference in his looks slightly because it was a year apart.
During that time, did you notice anything else of the ordinary with her?
What do you mean?
Well, did she seem preoccupied with anything? Or during that time, did you notice anything else of the ordinary with her?
If you could be more specific, I'm sure I can help.
Well, did she seem preoccupied with anything? Did she mention going to meet anybody or where she was going later that day?
He did give an outstanding performance in both roles, but I think he was a little bit better in the second version, to be honest, because I think he'd kind of grown into that role. He knew it, and he'd kind of already experienced shooting it in the first version. So it was, I think he kind of become familiar with that role a lot more. So I think he was a lot better in the second version, to be honest, but he was pretty good. Pretty damn good in the first version. Now, the role of Zoe, who is Mel's social worker, was in the first version originally played by an actress called Bridget Ladyman. Now, when we came to do the second version, like some of the other actors, she didn't return because she didn't want to come back on the same circumstances, didn't want to do it for just travel expenses again, which is fine. So that was her decision. She decided not to come back. So then I replaced her with an actress called Susan Wiseman, who is the actor who is actually in the film right now, and she did an amazing role. I think she was a little bit better than Bridget, if I'm being honest, but they both were really good actors. Also, there was a third actress who actually played a little bit of Zoe, and that was because during production, Susan had to have some corrective surgery on her face, and I needed to do some pickup shots further down the line for, I think it was one particular scene. And so I had to get, because Susan couldn't come back, I then had to get Mel, who was playing the mother. So I got Mel to come in because she was a similar build, size, and had kind of this similar hair colour to her. So she put on that costume, and then I just did some very close tight up shots where you couldn't see, obviously, identify who she was. And it was kind of just over the shoulder shots. It was shots of hands, shots of her feet, legs, that kind of thing. I needed like little cutaways for that scene. So she wore the costume and she came back and she played a little bit of Zoe in the film as well.
Have you been in contact with the Housing Association? Okay, I'll call them.
This is just temporary, it's too big for me.
I know. I'll chase it up.
Have you been in touch with the Housing Association? I'll give them a call.
This is temporary. This is too big for me.
I know. I'll handle it.
Now, the character of Sam was played by 2 different actors in 2 of the different versions of the film. So in the first version was an actor called Adam Baroni, who had only a little bit experience of acting. He was a bodybuilder actually, and he wanted to get into acting. He came. To be honest, when I cast him, he seemed okay, but then his performance during the actual production was really lacking, to be honest, and that's why I recast him in the second version when we shot it a year later, and I ended up with a guy called Mike Carr, who did a much better performance than Adam did, and so like Mike obviously ended up in the film.
Just here.
I know they were, but they've gone now, so I think I'm safe. Now where is he? Look, I'm not leaving until I get an answer.
The police were just here.
Yeah. They've gone now. You gonna let us in or what?
The only other actor who returned, although he was just a featured extra in this, was the main police officer in the film. So Dennis Bear played the same police officer in both versions of the film. So that's a roundup of the various actors that filled all the individual roles, who kind of swapped and changed and didn't come back or was sacked, or for whatever reason that they changed. Now you might be wondering why the costumes for the different actors weren't the same for the characters, and that was because those costumes, those clothes, actually belonged to those individual actors, so they brought along their own costumes. So that's why Natasha and Rachel playing the same role wear different clothes, because they belong to those actors. So that's it for this episode. If you want to see some more, please don't forget to like, share, follow and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.